But I do like the analogy that it's sort of like a woman's purse. No matter how big or how small the purse is that we buy, we manage to fill it with all kinds of things that we think are really important. So welcome back to Leadership Highway. This is Coach McCurdy, and Leadership Highway is the fast-track podcast to help you 10x your impact, bust some myths, break barriers, and most importantly, get out of your own damn way. Today we have a really cool guest, Josh Eyers. He is an exceptional performer in the mortgage industry, an industry that has just been ravaged the last few years with the economy. Josh is here. He's going to talk to us a little bit about how to be successful even in a down market, how to handle pressure, how to prioritize, how to go from thinking about yourself to thinking about others, and what that does to help 10x your business and 10x your life. Hey, Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a crazy couple of years. You are in the mortgage business. And somehow, with all of the insanity during COVID and all of the insanity with the market going tight, you've managed to stay really calm. How do you do that?
Well, that's a great question. We hear all the analogies, right? Like the ducks pedaling on the water, right? Where legs are going crazy, but on the surface, we just look calm and collected. And I mean, you're right. It's a unique time in the industry. It's been certainly without its, or hasn't been without its difficulties. But really, it's just been a focus on the mindset, right? Controlling the controllables is something that we say on the team here all the time. We can control our inputs, we can't control our outputs. And so if you redefine your focus and your success as what you're doing and not what you're accomplishing, then it can really get you through those harder times. So I suppose that's been our primary focus in this crazy time in the industry.
So you went from 0 to number 1. In Wyoming.
Well, yes. We went from non-existent. I don't know if we were ever 0, Erica, but
Okay, let's go back and never, just we're never 0. But in a difficult market where there's pressure everywhere, you were crazy enough to decide that you wanted to start something new, and then you not only started something new, but you took it to number 1. And I'm curious about, first of all, what made you decide that it was a good idea to make that switch?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting question. What makes a good idea? Sometimes you just have ideas and you roll with them, and then later on you go, hey, I don't know if that was a good idea, but it sure feels like it was.
Do we sometimes have the other two, right?
That's right. And honestly, I mean, it comes down to sort of this contrarian mindset, right? And Warren Buffett was one of the most famous people who coined this idea of, you want to buy when everybody's selling, sell when everybody's buying. And you can extend that same mentality into every difficult time in an industry. And, I'm a big fan of Stoicism philosophies. And there's a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's basically that exact principle put into action, right? We took coming down into a down market in the mortgage industry and going, everybody's freaking out. What am I going to do? And on the flip side of that, I'm going, hey, I've never had time like I have right now. And so now is the best time to really rethink, regather our thoughts, reorganize things so that when we get into the next big wave, we're ready to go. And so I suppose that was the nature by which we launched into this. It was like, hey, this is a unique opportunity where we have some time to put this effort and energy into it, create a new team, create a new branch, launch the brand here in Wyoming, and just kind of roll, right? We came in with 4 people, quickly grew, and I'm super happy with where we are now.
So let me ask you this. When we think about all of the things that you've accomplished, I'm going to guess that you might be something of a goal setter. Maybe?
A little bit.
So when you're setting goals, tell me, what are the things you think about when you are setting these outrageous goals for yourself and your team?
Yeah, goal setting is way more art than science, right? And a lot of it comes down to your own intuition, your own feelings, and your own drives. But when I'm setting goals, typically, I look for what's attainable, and then I try to stretch that out. And typically I'll have sort of two subset goals. Goal number one in this analogy would have been, hey, let's launch a new brand, let's launch a new team. Goal number two would have been, let's become the number one lender. And so, I'm always looking for those split goals so that I don't stop when I hit the first one, because that's what a lot of people do, right? They're like, hey, I'm going to achieve this. And then they achieve that. Hey, what's next? So I'm just always looking for the drive and, what inspires me, what is new and exciting and really gives me something to get out of bed for.
So on Leadership Highway, one of the things that we do a lot, and by the way, guys, if you want more incredible stories like this, I want to make sure you follow, subscribe, get on board with the Leadership Highway, buckle up. So Josh, when we think about this pivot and we look back at our journey, at some point you went from this idea that you were going to be an amazing individual contributor to something much bigger. And when we think about that, can we talk about what do you think was the big change for you?
That's a really good question. If we think about the leadership context, and I'm actually going to rewind back a little bit because I've had leadership opportunities for a long time, and none of them have really launched off like this one. And if I think backwards, it really is the nature of that, I think, was probably the reason for my drive into the leadership or into the growth mode. And so, if I think back to where 10 years ago, an opportunity to manage a retail store that I was working for, it was about me achieving more, and it was about me getting more, and it was about, so it was about me, right? And that's not the right place to lead from. So, what has changed between now and then? I think the focus for me has become on others. And it's just become, how can I give to other people and really be a good steward of, the opportunities that I've been given in order to pour into others as well.
So would you say that it's almost counterintuitive, that as you wanted more for yourself and for your family, that the secret sauce was to stop thinking about yourself? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's uncanny. And we see this actually in a lot of people's lives when they want something so bad that they're gripping so hard onto it. And as soon as they let it go, guess what? Right? What they wanted, they get. And so it's the same thing here. When I took the focus off of me, the benefits have been there for me, right? But that's not what it's about anymore. And honestly, that's one of the most freeing things for me personally, is that it's not about me, and I don't have to focus on what I get out of the deal. I can just invest into other people, watch them grow, and let that rising tide lift all the boats.
Sure. Well, we have that analogy, that beautiful analogy that you can't hold water in a clenched fist, that we have to hold it really gently. The same idea with sand, or there's so many of those analogies. Do you have any specific principles that you use that guide you as you are leading and developing your people?
Yeah. So, several of them, those are sort of your core values, right? Your principles and your core values can often be intermingled there. And, humility first is, it's actually a core value of the company we're attached to, Fairway Independent Mortgage. And it is a huge core value of mine too. Where are we coming from on this? And is it coming from an egotistical perspective, or is it coming from simply focusing on somebody else? So that's sort of a litmus test oftentimes for decision-making and for next steps and action plans. Beyond that, I would say that another thing that really comes into play is, are you going to see other people grow from this decision? So what are you giving to somebody else? And giving comes first. And then, of course, there's always focus on, don't compromise on your values for a benefit that you're wanting to achieve. You've got to figure out how to achieve your benefits, but also stay 100% true to who you are, your authentic self, and who you want to be.
Well, you're a pretty cool guy. So when we say authentic self, it's not bad being Josh, right? You get to do a lot of cool things. You're an outdoorsman, a hobbyist, a power lifter, a father, a musician, a man of faith. There's so many pieces in there. when you are looking for people to be a part of your team, how do those things come into play?
Yeah, so looking for team members is huge. And, one of the things that I have, I'll posit, and I'm going to say I'm positing it because I haven't tested it extensively enough, but I would say that with the right people, you can make any structure work. And, ideally you're matching your structure to your people, right? So if you have a need, you're looking for somebody who fits those needs. But more importantly, having the right people on board can give you all kinds of freedom and flexibility to make things work that would seem crazy or sound crazy if you didn't have the right people. So one of the key things that I look for in people is a passion, right? And that is, you cannot instill passion in people. And for me, as a very passionate person, like that's a huge part to connect with and to feel inspired by. And so, if somebody's got that strong passion, that strong desire, and it connects with our mission, so they have to have a why, right? So you've got a passion, you've got a why, and then I look for their consistency and their value.
I love that. All right, so I want to pivot just a little bit and talk about the fact that your family and your faith are hugely important to you. Yet you are one of the most driven business people I've ever had the pleasure to come alongside. So how do you balance that? What does that look like? There's a lot of people out here listening to Leadership Highway who are fighting to try to make a dream come true, might be feeling overwhelmed, underwater. It's a tough time in the economy. And I would bet that there's people out there that are thinking, right, with what time? I've got kids, I've got responsibilities, I have hobbies, I'm getting fat sitting on my butt at work, whatever it is. How do you do it?
Yeah. The short answer to that is to prioritize, right? There's the old adage that you never have time, you make time for what's important. And that is no more true in the leadership and growth space than anywhere else, because a lot of times we're creating something, right? It's not like somebody gave us a task list today of the things that you have to do, and you're just like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and in order to do this thing, I need to do this and this and this and this, and then to optimize it, I need to do this and this and this and this, and the next thing you know, you've got work lined out for months, if not years, right? And so you always have to choose to prioritize where the balance is and where you're going to put your energy and your effort. And so, having a family, for example, means that I don't spend near as much time in my business as I should. But then you get into the principles that your work will always expand to fit the time that it's given, or it will shrink to fit the time that it's given. And so you can actually become hyper efficient by following that idea and saying, you know what, in order to give my family the time that they need, I need to spend no more than a certain number of hours per week working on my business. And you would be amazed at how functional and how many tasks and how many items you can achieve when you limit yourself to that, so that you can go home and really spend that specific time connecting with the people who need you. Because for most of us, we work to have a life, right? And for many of us, I suppose, there is a fair number of people where their work is their life. And I'm not going to make any judgments on that right off the bat, but I would say that more of us really are trying to balance those two things. And it becomes important to make sure that you know where your priorities are, and that sometimes you have to tell your business that your family's your priority right now, and that might mean a missed opportunity.
I love that. I want to back up to one of the things you said, where it can expand, if your work can expand to fill the time you have, or it can be efficient. You probably don't carry a purse, I'm just guessing, but I do like the analogy that it's sort of like a woman's purse. No matter how big or how small the purse is that we buy, we manage to fill it with all kinds of things that we think are really important. So, actually sometimes I think I'm just not going to carry a purse anymore, and then then I can just walk around with nothing. That'd be kind of cool. But when we think about prioritizing, it's a big word. And lots of people like to throw around all these different ways that they do it. But what are some of the ways you found are the most effective for prioritizing?
Yeah, so, prioritizing is interesting, and it has to be individual, right? It has to be based on your own goals, your own drives, your own desires, and what you want to accomplish. Because there are seasons in life to prioritize spending lots of time with your family. And there are seasons in life to spend lots of time with your business. And in all things, setting proper expectations is super important, right? And so if I know that I'm coming into a big time with my business and my workflow, I'm having conversation with my wife and my kids, as young as they are. I'm telling them, hey, right now I'm going to have to spend a little more time. I'm going to have to go on these trips and I'm going to have to do these things. But then there's going to be a time where I come back and I am fully and wholly yours. And when we go on our family vacations, I'm all here. And so it's setting that proper expectation with the others that are impacted by your priorities. And then choosing your own priorities is always, it's the art of balancing and saying, when is the time to give all this energy and effort into one item or another?
I love it. I'm actually hearing a theme with everything that you're saying, because we're talking about how do you, Josh, prioritize, yet even in that, your answer is about other people. Even in how you prioritize, your solution to that is about taking the people around you into consideration.
It's funny, if you had talked to me as a teenager, I would have told you, I was like that weird kid and just always liked to be alone, right? It was like, I need friends, and I sort of bought into that, like, entirely rugged individualism, which is a core part of, especially outdoors people. And there's still a big part of me that likes to just get away and unplug and disconnect. But if you're being honest, a good thought exercise for all of us to go through every now and again is, what would your life look like if you didn't have close relationships? What would it look like if you didn't have friends and family members and people you cared about to share your accomplishments with, right? If you could go create the biggest thing and create the biggest achievement in your life ever, but you didn't have somebody to share that with, what would that mean? And, I have a sneaking suspicion that the vast majority of us are going to answer that question honestly and say, it doesn't mean near as much. And so being able to share with people is really a core part of being a human. And, for that reason, I think you always have to include others and consider others when you're deciding on the best way to live your life.
I love that. I've also heard a lot of consistency. It's interesting because you're balancing this idea of being consistent and working towards a goal with this idea that it depends. So how do you balance consistency with flexibility?
Yeah, that's a key. It's not. Is
that what you're saying? A good question.
Yes, all very good questions. And that's sort of a key. I'm one of those people that I don't do well with something that happens every single day. Now, I can do great with consistency of application over time, but I like variety. And I think that every person is going to have an appropriate balance of what level of structure and consistency in a daily activity and routine you need versus how much you need. But I think to better answer your question is just the consistency of discipline of always thinking through things. I love chess. I love playing chess. And even though in a game of chess, you'll probably never see the same exact layout of the board twice, right? But yet, you still have to be consistent in the way that you approach your decisions and your moves. And so here, and I think that's a good analogy of being consistent and balancing out what it looks like in that circumstance, because you do have to react the same way, or at least with the same focus and prioritization of how you're going to choose your next move. But you also have to balance that with what's happening right now on that board. And you may need to make a little bit of a different move than you would have in a different situation.
I love that. So I know we only have a little bit more time, but I have a couple more questions. One of them, Josh, I know that your faith is super important to you. Would you take just a few minutes and talk about, because in the business world, we're not always comfortable talking about our faith, but I know that really does inform a lot of the decisions you make. So can you talk about how you handle that tension between the business world and your faith?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. It's not as commonly spoken about as even maybe I think it should be or I want it to be. But of course, not everybody holds the same beliefs. And so, for me, I wear it on my sleeve, and I'm just very transparent and open and honest with people that my faith drives what I do. And That comes down to all the decisions that I make. It comes down to the values that I hold. And that is sort of the yardstick that I use to measure my next actions as well. Like, it has to be consistent with what I'm oriented towards. And honestly, it also is a consistent driver, because I know that if I'm faithful and I'm a good steward of what's been given to me, that God will provide back to me in that way. And so that is sort of an underlying theme and tone of all that I do, because that's how I have the confidence that what I'm going to do is successful. Because I know that if I am operating within His plan, and if I'm taking the time to really pray and focus on my major decisions, and look for His guidance, then His hand is going to be in whatever I'm achieving. And so that is how the faith sort of gives me the confidence to be able to do what I need to do.
I love that. Thank you. So, last big question for you. You're already number one in Wyoming. So, Josh, what is next?
I don't know. Next state.
What's next?
Yeah. Yes. So growth is always a goal, and it doesn't have to be getting bigger. Oftentimes it is, but always getting better. And, so we're going to continue refining the systems and teams that we have to just continue providing the best value we possibly can. We do a great job as it is, but we can always do better. And so that's always a part of the growth focus, but next we're hoping to take over the state of South Dakota. And from there, really grow into, our brand is the High Plains Mortgage Team. Let's take over the whole High Plains.
I think that's fantastic. So if somebody is inspired by what they've learned about you, about how you run a team, about how you lead your business, would you please share with our Leadership Highway listeners, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, so probably the best way, you can find all my contact info on our website, which is just highplainsteam.com. That is plains like the ground, not in the air.
Good distinction.
So highplainsteam.com. All my contact info is in there. Part of being in the mortgage business, we have to be available. So my cell phone's right there. You can text, you can call, my email's there. If you want to buy in the area, you can do the application link, the whole thing.
Awesome. I love that. I love the way you do business and the ethics with which you approach everything. Truly honored to have you on the show. So for all of you listeners, if you are wanting to get more of these amazing stories, ideas of how you can take a goal and even through really difficult times, move that goal forward, move that needle forward, I want you to like and subscribe and be part of the Leadership Highway team. And we're here. Josh, I'm going to let you go. For the rest of you guys, just please sign up and listen. You'll be glad you did. As always, I get more out of these things than probably anyone. And, as we think about making a difference, I want you guys to buckle up. It's a shit show out there, and it's going to be up to you to stay focused on the road.